First, legendary actress and comedian Cloris Leachman has died. Leachman won an Oscar for her role in The Last Picture Show. She was also the noisy neighbor, Phyllis, on The Mary Tyler Moore Show.
The Facts of Life ran for 9 seasons, ended in 1988, and raised an entire generation of American television viewers on Wednesday nights. 16 cast members passed through those Eastland School hallways over the course of the show's run. Some became household names. Some disappeared quietly. Some fought battles so serious they barely made it through. 3 of them are gone. 1 died just last year. And 1 cast member, someone who appeared in the show's earliest episodes before being let go, went on to become one of the most recognized actors on the planet. The question of who's still here and what their lives actually looked like after the cameras stopped rolling turns out to be considerably more interesting than most people expect. The 3 who didn't make it. The place to start is with the losses, because they shape the rest of the story. And because 2 of the 3 deaths involved women who survived things that should have killed them years earlier, only to face something worse later on. Charlotte Rae, who played housemother Edna Garrett from the show's premiere in 1979 through 1986, was 53 years old when the series began. She had spent 3 decades building a career on Broadway and in television before landing the role that would define her public legacy. She had actually originated the character a year earlier on Different Strokes, playing the Drummond family housekeeper, and when NBC spun her character off into her own series, she became the warm, dependable center around which the entire show was built. What the audience watching at home didn't know during all those years was what she was managing privately. Charlotte Rae raised an autistic son at a time when the medical community had almost no framework for understanding the condition. Her older son, Andy, showed signs from infancy, but doctors repeatedly told her she was imagining problems that weren't there. When a specialist finally confirmed the diagnosis, the conversation that followed was blunt. If the boy didn't show significant improvement by age 6, institutionalization would be the recommended path. She and her husband refused that outcome entirely and spent years finding ways to support Andy that the existing system wasn't offering. He grew up to live a full life and was never institutionalized. That fight, conducted almost entirely out of public view, ran parallel to the years she was showing up on set and playing everyone's favorite television mother. In 2009, Charlotte Rae was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, the same disease that had taken both her mother and her older sister. Because she had watched both of them die from it, she had enrolled in a long-term medical study years earlier. And that enrollment meant her own diagnosis was caught and treated in a way that gave her a real chance. She beat it. Surviving pancreatic cancer puts a person in a very small statistical category, and she was in her 80s when she did it. 8 years later, in April of 2017, she was diagnosed with bone cancer. This one she couldn't beat. She fought it for 16 months before dying on August 5th, 2018, at her home in Los Angeles. She was 92 years old, surrounded by her family. The cast members who had grown up under her care on screen responded with the kind of grief that only makes sense when the person you're mourning genuinely shaped who you became. Cloris Leachman came into the show in Season 7 in 1986 as Beverly Ann Stickle, Mrs. Garrett's sister, brought in to look after the girls after Mrs. Garrett's departure. What most viewers didn't know was that Charlotte Rae had essentially engineered this casting herself. She and Cloris Leachman had been classmates at Northwestern University and roommates in New York City in the 1950s, when they were both young and broke and trying to make it as actors. When Charlotte's contract expired and she decided to leave, she told the producers they had one option for her replacement. They listened. Cloris Leachman arrived on the show already carrying one of the most extraordinary careers in American entertainment. She had won an Academy Award for The Last Picture Show in 1971. She had won multiple Emmy Awards for her work on The Mary Tyler Moore Show and its spin-off. By the time she walked onto the Facts of Life set, she had more significant industry recognition than almost anyone else in the building. She spent the final 2 seasons of the show in a role that was, by the standards of her career, a relatively modest one, but she brought the same full attention to it that she brought to everything. After the show ended, she kept working. She appeared on Malcolm in the Middle from 2000 through 2006, which introduced her to an entirely new generation of viewers. At 82, she became the oldest contestant ever to compete on Dancing with the Stars. Over her 9-decade career, she accumulated 8 Primetime Emmy Awards, tying a record for the most acting Emmys ever won by a single performer. She also held an Academy Award, a BAFTA, and a Golden Globe. Cloris Leachman died on January 27, 2021, at her home in Encinitas, California. She was 94. The death certificate listed a stroke as the primary cause. With COVID-19 listed as a contributing factor, she had been battling the virus in the days immediately before her death. The most recent loss came on February 13, 2025. John Lawler, who had played Headmaster Stephen Bradley during the first season, died at the Albuquerque Veterans Hospice in New Mexico at 83 years old. He had served in the United States Army in Vietnam before beginning a 60-year acting career that took him from The Facts of Life through guest appearances on Breaking Bad and Longmire, all the way to a final role in the Netflix series Godless in 2017. 3 deaths across the full cast history, 3 very different stories. And the 13 who remain are carrying their own stories, several of which are considerably harder than anything the show ever depicted. The cast members' cancer almost took twice. There is one person on this cast whose medical history alone would make a script worth writing, and she is still here. Mindy Cohn played Natalie Green across all 9 seasons of the show, from the premiere in 1979 through the finale in 1988. She was 13 years old when she was cast, and she hadn't been looking for an acting career. Charlotte Rae found her. During a research visit to a school in Holby Hills in 1978, the production team asked a student to serve as tour guide, and Mindy Cohn was the student who showed up. Charlotte watched her lead the group around campus, making people laugh, reading the room, holding attention without appearing to try, and told the producers they needed to create a role for this girl. She even asked them to name the character after her best childhood friend. That's how Natalie Green came to exist. Mindy spent 9 years on the show and then went to university, earning a degree in cultural anthropology from Loyola Marymount. She worked steadily afterward, guest roles, recurring parts, and eventually becoming the voice of Velma Dinkley in the Scooby-Doo franchise, a role she held for 13 years between 2002 and 2015. By 2024, she was starring alongside Kristen Wiig and Carol Burnett in the Apple TV Plus series Palm Royale. In 2012, she was diagnosed with breast cancer. She described the moment of recognition as a physical intuition, a sense that something was wrong that sent her to a doctor before there were obvious symptoms. The biopsy confirmed it. Over the next 5 years, she underwent a double mastectomy, chemotherapy, and radiation. The cancer kept metastasizing. It kept finding new ground. She has been public about how that period felt, the particular frustration of being an optimist, facing something she couldn't fix or control, no matter how clearly she understood what was happening. In 2017, she was declared cancer-free. She became a founding member of a cancer support organization and went back to work with the energy of someone who understood exactly what the alternative looked like. Then, in April of 2026, she posted a photograph of herself in a hospital bed. She said she had been off social media because she had to go fight cancer again. She didn't specify what kind. She thanked her medical team and her family and said she'd be ready for her next adventure in a couple of weeks. As of the time this script was written, Mindy Cohn is 59 years old and she is still here. The roles they turned down and the ones that changed everything. This particular cast has one of the more remarkable collections of near misses and alternate histories in television, and most of it happened after the show ended. Lisa Whelchel played Blair Warner from the first episode through the last 9 full seasons, making her one of only 2 cast members to appear in every single one alongside Charlotte Rae. She was 16 when the show began, having already spent a year as a Mouseketeer on the revived Mickey Mouse Club, after writing a letter directly to Disney Studios at 12 asking for an audition. They gave her one. 5 years after The Facts of Life wrapped, producers from a new NBC series called Friends reached out to her about a specific role. The character was Rachel Green. Lisa read the script and turned it down. Her Christian faith had been the defining commitment of her life since childhood, and the show's content around relationships and sexuality was something she couldn't reconcile with that. Jennifer Aniston got the role, and the rest of that particular story is well documented. Lisa had also previously refused to appear in a Facts of Life episode in which Blair was supposed to lose her virginity. The writers simply wrote her out of that episode rather than recast the moment. She married an associate pastor in 1988, 3 months after the show's final episode. The marriage lasted 24 years before ending in divorce in 2012. 9 days after the divorce was finalized, she flew to the Philippines to compete on Survivor. 39 days, a second-place finish, and the fan-voted Sprint Player of the Season award by a margin of less than 1%. She later said the experience was genuinely useful because it kept her from sitting still inside the loss. 7 years after that, at 56, she married a psychologist named Pete Harris and has described the second marriage as built on the specific clarity that only comes from having worked through everything the first one taught her. She is 62 now, hosts a television show about pop culture memorabilia, and started a Substack in 2024 about self-discovery. Nancy McKeon, who joined the show in Season 2 as Joe Polniacek after 4 of the original cast members were let go, has her own alternate history moment. In 1994, both she and Courtney Cox auditioned for the role of Monica Geller on Friends. Cox got it. Earlier, Nancy had also been considered for the lead in a sitcom adaptation of Working Girl, but that part went to a then-unknown actress named Sandra Bullock. What Nancy did get, somewhat accidentally, was a serious film audition at 13. A casting director saw her cry on cue in a Hallmark commercial and called her in immediately. She booked the role and spent 8 seasons playing Jo, a character whose toughness and working-class background gave the show a dimension it wouldn't have had otherwise. During her time on The Facts of Life, Nancy and her parents were granted a private audience with Pope John Paul II, an experience she described for years afterward as something that existed outside the normal registers of what a person can put into words. She also dated Michael J. Fox for 3 years after they met on the set of a television movie in 1983, keeping the relationship deliberately private. She is 60 years old now, lives on a ranch near Austin, Texas, with her husband and their 2 daughters, and remains one of the more intentionally private figures from the entire cast. The one who became the biggest star in the room. Nobody who watched George Clooney play a handyman named George Burnett across 17 episodes of The Facts of Life between 1985 and 1987 had any particular reason to assume they were watching someone who would become one of the most recognized actors in the world. He was 24, trying to build a television career after his original plan. A tryout for the Cincinnati Reds baseball team hadn't resulted in a contract offer. His father was a broadcast journalist. His aunt was the singer and actress Rosemary Clooney. Entertainment was in the family's vocabulary, but nothing about his early career suggested what was coming. He spent 2 seasons on the show and then kept moving through television. A recurring role on Roseanne, a stint on Sisters, until 1994, when he was cast as Dr. Doug Ross on ER, and the trajectory of his career changed permanently. 2 Academy Awards followed: Best Supporting Actor for Syriana in 2005, and Best Picture as a producer for Argo in 2012. He received the Cecil B. DeMille Award in 2015 and a Kennedy Center honor in 2022. His personal life moved at a different pace. He married actress Talia Balsam in 1989 and divorced in 1993, after which he became publicly certain he would never marry again. Michelle Pfeiffer and Nicole Kidman each bet him $10,000 that he would have children before 40. They were both wrong and had to pay. He returned the money and doubled the bet to age 50. He lost that one. At 53, he married British human rights lawyer Amal Alamuddin in Venice, and in 2017, at 56, they had twins. He is 65 years old now and still working. Lisa Whelchel, reflecting on those handyman scenes from the late 1980s, has said that if she had known then what he would become, she would have worn makeup to rehearsals. The ones still standing quietly. The cast members who get discussed less tend to have stories that are just as specific, even if they played out further from the spotlight. Molly Ringwald appeared in only the first season, playing a character named Molly Parker, before being cut when the show was retooled for season 2. She was 11 years old at the time and had been cast after a director saw her playing an orphan in a stage production of Annie. The retooling let her go, and the career that followed, 16 Candles, The Breakfast Club, Pretty in Pink, made her one of the defining faces of 1980s American cinema. She turned down leads in Pretty Woman and Ghost in 1990. She speaks fluent French and spent much of the 90s working in French film. She is 58 and still working. Kim Fields played Tootie Ramsey across all 9 seasons, entering the cast at 9 years old and growing up entirely on camera. After the show ended, she went to university, earned a degree in communications from Pepperdine, and built an almost entirely separate career as a television director. Over 160 episodes directed by 2024, including extensive work on Kenan and Kel and House of Pain. She joined the Real Housewives of Atlanta for 1 season, competed on Dancing with the Stars, and since 2021 has been starring on the Netflix sitcom The Upshaws. She is 57 and lives in Atlanta. Gary Coleman's height had inadvertently affected this cast too. Kim Fields had actually been considered for a role on Different Strokes as Arnold's girlfriend, but by the time the part was ready to cast, she was already taller than Coleman, and the role went to someone else. The roller skates that appeared during the first season of The Facts of Life existed because the production team needed to adjust camera angles to make 9-year-old Kim's height work on screen. Charlotte Rae's connection to the cast extended even to the later editions. Cloris Leachman joined because Charlotte recommended her. Mindy Cohn was discovered by Charlotte on a school tour. The character of Natalie Green was named after Charlotte's best childhood friend from high school. The show's emotional center, it turns out, was built around one woman's specific relationships and loyalties in ways that only became fully visible in retrospect. The cast stands now at 13 survivors from 16 members. The 3 losses are spread across 7 years, 2018, 2021, 2025, and the most recent one came just months ago. The 13 who remain range from Molly Ringwald, at 58, to Jenny O'Hara, who played a teacher in the first season and left after 4 episodes at 84. They are scattered across California, Texas, Nashville, and beyond, carrying careers that went in directions nobody would have predicted from the Eastland School common room. The Facts of Life gave a generation its first real television portrait of young women figuring out who they were, and then the cast spent the next 37 years doing exactly that, out of frame and largely without an audience watching. So the question worth sitting with is this: if the show was really about becoming, about the slow and often painful process of working out what kind of person you're going to be, which cast member's life after the cameras stopped actually told that story most honestly? And would any of them recognize themselves in the answer? Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe to our channel. For more interesting stories like this, be sure to click on the next video that pops up on your screen. You never know what you'll discover next.